Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Atlantic Bushcraft Adventures. Tonight, episode 324. And, well, frankly, this is a topic that you kind of brought up there, Ben. So why don't you lead us into it? And I'm going to play follow tonight.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's not a lot to it, and we've briefly talked about this a few times, I think, in the past. But it's always an interesting one. Last week I was in Newfoundland. The flies, some of the days were quite bad, especially like some of the biting insects, the bigger ones. And it is the summer, and flies are oftentimes a problem, oftentimes more in the spring. But I have a trip coming up, and I want to be sure because I'm planning on taking a tent that doesn't have screens. So it's a shelter that doesn't have this, and how can I minimize my exposure to flies while I'm out? Because we all been there. It can really make a trip miserable if you're constantly hiding from flies.
Oh, absolutely. And just kind of like we were talking a little bit before we started here, there's a lot of categories this can fall into. There's some natural methods that we were kind of talking about. There's some preventative things you can do. There is some topical agents you can use. There's things you can put on your clothes. It's definitely a good topic to come back to every now and then and just kind of remind people, especially seeing I myself done a little bit more a little bit more research on the topic. And I'll talk a little bit about that somewhere in here. I threw a link to the article I'm going to talk about in the description if anybody wants to read it, because I found it interesting because a lot of things I used to believe, they actually did some scientific studies on and gave different evidence. I'm not going to say that it would necessarily sway everybody one way or the other, but there's some interesting results nonetheless.
So, I mean, first off, is just choosing locations. Like certain locations are much more prone to mosquitoes, and I think it's important to realize that all insects are a part of nature. They're part of the environment, and just trying to wipe them out in general isn't really good for the overall ecosystem. But that being said, they can also carry disease. I think one of the number one killers of people in the world was mosquitoes and the diseases they carry. So we have to keep that in mind, and protecting yourself from diseases, things like Lyme's disease with ticks and malaria and stuff like that's been naturally or normally carried by mosquitoes. Not so much here, but it's just one of those things. Other diseases can be carried by similar animals, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it's moving, man. It's not being confined anymore. We've had cases in Canada now.
Yeah. So, if you can minimize or eliminate getting bit by insects, you can minimize risks of getting disease, at least from that avenue. So, and like you said, there's some very natural ones, and like I said, environment. So, a windy beach tends to have a lot less flies than a meadow with lots of high grass and wet areas in it. Flies like places they can land and lay eggs and stuff, and they like places they can shelter in. Weeds and trees and bushes and stuff is a good place they can kind of hide and avoid the wind and predators and come out when there's opportunity for food. So knowing the environments that insects hang out in and try to avoid those really do help. The best prevention is medicine is prevention. Preventing yourself from getting the flies is much better than just lathering on all kinds of chemicals and stuff and trying to, but that's not always possible. Large parts of the world have mosquitoes everywhere.
Oh, for sure. But I guess just adding into your thoughts there, definitely anywhere that's generally more humid or moist, a lot of the larval forms of insects and blood-sucking insects, they require more moist areas because they don't have their exoskeletons and stuff like that, and they're required to retain some moisture. So, I mean, if you have, and we're going to throw some words around here people may not enjoy 100%, but maggots, which are the larval flies, you generally don't find them crawling around on the pavement because they'll dry up and die. So they're going to be in damper areas, usually around dead, decaying things. So with this thought process in mind, typically your evergreen forests, so, anything that has conifers, because their branches come down lower, it traps the humidity lower, you're generally going to have more insects. Not to mention that the needles and stuff will fall down, makes a nice duff layer that holds a ton of moisture, which is perfect for breeding a lot of these things. On the flip side, if you do have the chance to get to like a hardwood stand or a deciduous forest with the leaves that have a lot more air that move through, and generally the branches are a lot higher up and it allows more air movement down below, I mean, you're not going to have no bugs. Generally, you'll have fewer bugs.
100%. Yeah. So environment is a huge thing, right?
And that's the thing. Like you said, a penny, what is it? An ounce of prevention's worth a pound of cure. I think that's what you were trying to say. That's what popped in the back of my head. But it's completely true. A little forethought goes a long way to stop you from maybe needing to use as much of those synthetic chemicals and stuff like that down the line, because, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, there are people out there that don't like putting that stuff on their skin. I mean, truthfully, depending on how high the concentration of the active ingredient is, I myself don't have the most comfort in lathering myself in it time and time and time again, but if the flip side of that's getting eaten alive from flies, sometimes you got to weigh your options.
Yeah. And I think one of the things you said earlier before we came on here was lesser of evils. So that's kind of where you have to look at it. Like, everything has some risks, but is it better to put on some fly spray, which may be toxic, or get bit by an insect that may carry a life-altering disease? Like, sometimes that's your option. You know, not a great option, not an option any of us want to have to deal with, but we kind of have to be aware of it, right?
No, 100%. And I guess if I may on this one, kind of rolling off from environmental, is literally just the clothes we're wearing on our back. In that article I linked down below, they did link specific colored clothing to attracting more bugs or less bugs. And in general, and I'm painting a big swath here, I encourage you to read it and make your own decisions, but in general, lighter colored clothing tends to attract less bugs, and the ones it does attract, it tends to make them easier to see.
Good point for sure.
And I guess something that came from that, I guess while I'm rolling along on this topic, and then I'll be quiet for a minute, is one of the things they said was, if you dress smart, you can put a lot of like long-sleeved, long pant-legged clothes on and not increase a whole lot of heat. I know myself, I typically wear UV shirts now. I sunburn so easily, and I'm getting older, and I hate sunburns, and I just don't want to, deal with my skin falling apart and all that crap. I wear UV shirts, and I invested into, some cheapies off Amazon, and they were kind of warm and stuff, but then I invested into a couple good ones, and they really don't add a whole lot of heat, but they protect me great from the UV, plus they're covering my body, and I generally don't get bitten by mosquitoes and stuff as much either, because it's very thin material, it's very free-flowing, it allows a lot of breathability, and once again, it's kind of those brighter colors. In the instance of my UV shirts, they're actually reflective green, like a vest, because I wear them on the motorcycle course. Yeah. But at the same time, you could get like white ones, or very kind of like tannish colored ones, or cream colored ones, or whatever you want. There is some selection there, and it's going to give you a lot of great coverage, not only from the bugs, but from UV, and just cuts, scrapes, and stuff like that in general. Walking through the woods, I've scratched my arm on a limb pretty bad once, and it ended up being a whole thing for one of my outings.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I had to say on like the going with environment, because the next one, of course, is the clothes you're wearing, and I wanted to include that from that article, because it was one of the big things that I was looking at, and I knew lighter colored clothing made them easier to see, but I didn't really realize that the lighter colored clothing, they seem to be attracted less to. And they set up experiments and stuff like that, and once again, I encourage you to read the article if you're so interested in it.
Yeah, I was always taught they sense heat. Darker clothing absorbs and radiates the heat.
Bless you. And yeah, that's one of the things they mentioned in this article, was not only is it heat, but it's the amount of carbon monoxide, dioxide that your body emits, not just from your breathing, but based on a whole bunch of like metabolistic, I don't know if that's a real word, but hopefully people understand what I'm saying, based on your metabolism and stuff like that, and just how your body regulates itself. Certain people emit more carbon monoxide, dioxide naturally through their bodies than others, and that can kind of become an issue. You must remember the old joke: get your buddies eat bananas, and the potassium coming out will attract the mosquitoes, kind of deal. Once again, mentioned in the thing, uh, you'd have to eat a ton of bananas to get enough potassium start leaking out of you to actually start attracting more mosquitoes. But there's still a lot of people that hold true to that. I mean, as a kid, I can remember always feeding the kids that came around bananas so we could laugh at them getting eaten by mosquitoes. And yes, that's a terrible thing to do. Uh, but it happened nonetheless.
For sure. You mentioned clothing, and we've talked about this before, and I'll briefly mention it, and then maybe we'll get to this other product I was going to mention.
Yeah.
No fly. We've bought no fly gear before, and that seems to really help too. And that's just a clothing with something embedded in it. I don't think they advertise exactly what it is, but it's embedded in it. It repels flies, and it does seem to work. I've done motorcycle trips where I stop and I have a bandana I wear, and I had far fewer flies around me than my buddies, and I think that made the difference. So one of the things we've mentioned this a lot over the years, and we've never really had it on the show, but Premetherin is the product, and this one's one sold by Sawyer, a company that we've talked about before for their water purification system. And what they advertise is you can spray this directly on your clothing, not when you're in it, and you wait for a few hours till it dries, and then it leaves something in the clothing that this perthrin material, and it makes it bad for flies. Flies don't do well, but the liquid form is actually quite harmful to pets and people. So,
And if I
but it's
remember, and you have the box in front of you, so you can probably read more into this, the reason it's potentially poisonous when it's in its liquid form is the accelerants it uses to disperse itself. The permethrin itself, once it's dry, it's fairly inert, meaning it doesn't readily absorb through the skin. But the accelerant, whatever it is, it breaks it down to a way that not only does the permethrin absorb into your skin, whatever the accelerant is absorbs in as well.
yeah. So it says it repels against mosquitoes that may carry Zika, West Nile virus, DGOG, and Chikungunya. But it also kills ticks, which may carry Lyme disease and Rocky Mountain spotted fever. So a couple of the bugs that do bother us, it can help get rid of and repel. So that holds a value to me. My thought isn't so much for clothing. I have a tent without a screen, and I'm planning on spraying that, probably going for a nice long walk. And when we come back a few hours later, hopefully that'll make the tent more or less bug proof for the rest of the summer, which means we can really enjoy our trip. We're going to go for a few days and avoid the repercussions that it brings, right?
And if I remember correctly, that stuff's good for a couple washes through the washer as well. They say like 3 or 4 washes.
6 weeks or 6 washings.
6 weeks, 6 washes.
Yeah.
So I mean that's quite a ways. You know what I mean? Especially if you're like you folks are doing multi-day trip. If you take some prep time, prepare your clothes
Yeah.
beforehand, pack them in as you're going. If you were doing a 6-day trip, I mean, you'd be pretty good to go for the whole thing with clothing that is now hopefully bug repellent.
This says it can treat 5 outfits, and an outfit consists of one shirt, one pair of pants, and one pair of socks.
So there you go. And I mean, that makes sense. A lot of people overlook their socks. That's where most of the creepy crawlies start crawling up on you. I mean, ticks. Most times ticks will come into your socks and then crawl up under your pant legs. That's why we always recommend, as dorky as it looks, fold your socks over your pant legs, fold your pants over your shirt, and that way they have to literally walk at least up to here before they can start getting inside your clothing. And hopefully by then you notice them.
Well, they might be able to get in through buttonholes.
Buttons
There's a
and
few
stuff,
spots
yeah.
sometimes, but for sure, it makes a difference, and I think that's important. Past that, I mean, we've all used bug sprays and stuff. They usually last the day or part of a day or till you wash. But they are effective. They do work. You mentioned, and I've seen it, there are non-chemical methods, certain like shapes that can terrify some bugs and keep them away.
Absolutely. Eric just saying a comment here. I work outside in Central Florida. Long sleeves is a must for both the sun and it's a big stop for the buzzing around your face too. So yeah, it's a big help for when it comes to stopping the bugs. But yeah, I know where you're going with this. Keep on going. I just didn't want that comment to go too long.
Yeah. So I've seen them. Some people get things that look like dragonflies, and they pin it to their hat, to the shoulder, just somewhere that around their body. Some of them are a little springy, so they kind of hover out there a little bit, and it's supposed to prevent flies from getting too close to you.
And this is one of the ones I have actually tried myself, and I did find fairly good success with it. And as I was telling Ben before we started off, when I was with Natural Resources, there was a fellow that worked with the helicopters. Someone in his family, his wife or something, made these. And we all kind of goofed on him for a little bit when he first started wearing them, until we noticed he had significantly less flies around him. And then by the end of the summer, we all had one pinned onto our hats, and honestly, I did see a difference. Now, they still buzz around you, but they tend not to land. They're not quite as aggressive. And if anybody's wondering, most dragonflies eat flies. So there is that kind of genetic self-preservation bred into them where they're not going to, sit down beside something that's going to eat them. Most times, the zebra doesn't lay with the lion. You know what I mean? There's always exceptions, but in general.
The other thing, and this is the non-direct method, I guess, is putting something into the air that'll push them away or avoid them. And for years, citronella candles existed. Before that, I can remember my grandmother used to keep a low fire going, and she'd throw wet grass on top of it because it would smoke, and that smoke oftentimes confuses and distracts and bugs flies, and they just avoid the smoky area because it's too much for them. So that kind of works. I have right here, I can't remember who makes this particular one. Thermocell, I guess. I thought it was a different company. But Thermocell, these have a liquid. They heat it up. They push it into the air. And this one, I think, says it creates a 20-foot zone. So you put this on like your picnic table, and it should keep the flies away from your picnic table. Mosquito coils. And certain types of fungus, if you cut them up and dry, you can burn the same thing and it releases a smoke.
Yeah, chaga. Chaga, actually, I like the smell of chaga when it's burning, and it just needs a little ember and it will smolder, and it actually smolders almost as good as a mosquito coil. I have used them in the camp to keep flies away, and right or wrong, I know this is going to be controversial because now you're burning something, blah, 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 but it worked for me.
Yeah. No. I've watched mosquito coils literally drop mosquitoes out of the air, and they just sit there and they twitch. It's like a nerve gas. So any of these methods can be used. And last but not least, but for sure, is a screen. You can get a screen suit or screened areas, screened tents to sort of avoid them. So you can have a physical barrier that will actually physically block them getting to you. So chemically, you can try to kill them. Aerosolically, I guess, if that's a word. You can use an aerosol method, something that puts an odor or something in the air that drives them away. Or you can build a physical barrier. I mean, your car is a physical barrier, your house is a physical barrier, tents are physical barriers. These are things that can keep flies away. Just know that if there's holes, they will make it in, and they never seem to make it out. So flies will get in and accumulate.
And sometimes, depending on the screen, it's not fine enough to keep everything out. So Eric's asking another question over here. When you guys talk about flies that bite, are you talking about black flies? Flies, very loose term here, at least in Atlantic Canada, and Ben knows what I mean. We have black flies. We also have jiggers. We have no-see-ums. We have horse flies, moose flies, deer flies, house flies. We have a significant amount of flies that buzz around and bite. And most of the flies, like when we say house flies, moose flies, deer flies, they're all kind of one phylum of species. They're different sizes. And depending on the size of the fly, when they bite you, it feels like they're taking limbs with them. Like a moose fly literally is about the size of my thumbnail in its body. Like they're a big fly. Generally, you're going to see them deep woods. If one of those suckers muckles onto you and decides to bite you, like it feels like he took the body part when it bites. They hurt. They don't bite
Yes.
often, but when they do, you would swear it's like a human latching onto you. I find the no-see-ums, black flies and no-see-ums, and when we say no-see-ums, they're like a black fly, but smaller again. You literally can barely see them, and depending on some of the netting, like the fly suits and stuff, they can still get through them. So all you are doing is keeping the big flies out while creating a nice, safe haven for these no-see-ums to come inside and basically chow down on you.
Yeah. And you're right. It's the small no-see-ums can be bad. We have ones called sandflies. They may be similar in design, but the sandflies actually also seem to live in sand. So you go to a nice sandy beach, think you're fine. You lay on the beach, next thing everything touching the beach is itchy. That's the type of sandfly or something in the sand. It's coming out and biting you.
I
They
think we
leave
used to call them
small bumps.
sand gnats, but same thing. I think we're talking about the same thing.
They're very uncomfortable. We have ones called stouts. I think it's probably similar to your moose. Man, they bite. They're fair size. They're black. And when they knuckle into you, that it hurts. There's also copperheads growing up. They actually have the green and yellowish heads. All these things you see, they buzz around you, and when you catch them, it's a satisfying crunch.
Or you can use them as fishing bait. Like literally, Eric, these moose flies we're talking about, you could use them as fishing bait to catch rather large fish. Any case, kind of following along here. Yeah, you get those methods there. And I guess one last thing I want to talk about, because we're coming on 20 minutes, is I wanted to talk some fact and fiction, or myth versus myth busted, to a degree. And these are opinionated things, first and foremost. Some of them have come out of that article. Some of them have come from other research. And I'm going to ask you some questions, see if you heard of them, and get your thoughts on them. And then I'll kind of give you the scientific, quote-unquote, evidence one way or the other. So, have you heard Irish Spring will repel flies and bugs and other things?
I've heard that, as well as mice, a bunch of other, and yeah, some people leave them in the cabins and stuff on the floor and in the corners to help protect things. I don't think it makes a big difference. I've seen mice eat them.
I was going to say, scientifically, it has been tested without any verifiable results. They're not saying debunked. They're just saying no substantial data to back up one way or the other. But there is a significant part of the population that believes wholeheartedly that Irish Spring not only will, like if you shower with Irish Spring before you go out into the woods, that it is going to help you repel flies and ticks and mice and bears and deer, and apparently it is one of the most hated smells in the wilderness. I don't know where I sit on this one, honestly. I honestly don't know, because I know people that swear by it. Like, they swear if you take and grate up Irish Spring and sprinkle it in your gardens, you'll have, like, never a bug. Or if you put some in a spray bottle and shake it up with some mouthwash and spray it around your lawn, you're guaranteed to get rid of mosquitoes. And people are still doing this. Like, I know they are actively doing it. I have tried a little bit off it, and I haven't seen any significant difference in my own testing. Now, however, something along this lines that has been scientifically tested and shows significant results: coconut-based soaps. So apparently there is an enzyme or something in any coconut product that actually repels insects. Now, completely? No, but significant difference.
Wow.
In multiple testing. And that's one I would not have guessed on. I would have guessed that coconut scented things would be an attractant. Yeah, Eric, fire ants will eat anything, man. Nothing will stop those. I've literally, you know what, I'm not going to say that on this podcast. I have taken drastic measures with fire ant nests and have literally been defeated. But yeah, anyway, in this article, if you want to read it, Eric, look down there somewhere. It's right at the top. It's just one of the tidbits. You know, coconut-based soaps proven to get rid of bugs or whatever. But if you read down into the article a little bit, it'll tell you the studying and stuff they did. And they came back with coconut-based soaps, apparently. Now, on the flip side of that, heavily fragranted flowery soaps, which obviously shouldn't be too big of a surprise here, they're an attractant. So for our female counterparts out there, or guys that like to use heavily scented soaps that smell like roses and flowers and sweet things, they tend to attract. And one that Melissa was mentioning was some of the hair products she uses. A lot of those will have like very sweet smells to them. She has a strawberry shampoo. She has a flower fragrance shampoo, stuff like that, and those can be a big attractor, especially when the individual has longer hair, and it can get in behind and it gets trapped in around your neck. So something to think about. Now myself, I use the 25-in-1 body wash, where you can use it to wash your hair, face, legs, ears, car, motorcycle, walls, like whatever. I am one of those typical dudes. I'm not gonna lie. It comes in a pump bottle. Wash anything.
Of all soaps.
It is the soap. You just use it and clean whatever needs to be cleaned. But yeah, and frankly, it probably has some perfumes and stuff in it because I buy it from like the dollar store or Walmart, wherever it happens to be on sale at the time. And it's probably not that great for me either, but it's not a super strong scent, and that's kind of why I bought into this. It's fairly scent neutral, but there's probably still enough of a scent. Something to keep in mind. Basically, moral of the story, if you're going camping tomorrow, don't take a nice, long, leisurely bath in like a rose petal filled tub tonight. It could lead to more insects preying on you.
Yeah. What was it? Is there another one?
I was hoping Melissa would walk by. She had another. Mel, you still there? Nope, she's busy. All right, she was walking by and flashing me cues, but. Yeah, so Irish Spring, the scented stuff. Here's one for you. Some things that have been proven naturally to repel bugs, and I guess that's going to be lemon oils and peppermint oils. Apparently have some natural repellability to some insects. I think, and that kind of falls into the maybe a little less than the coconut-based products, but maybe a little better than nothing. Once again, varying results. I have seen studies where it has, we have proven it does something, but we're not really sure how much of something.
So why don't we mix all three of those?
And sometimes they do. There is a product called No Tick or Tick Gun or something like that here in Atlantic, Canada.
Atlantic?
Atlantic, thank you. I was going to say, I was just looking at it Home Hardware the other day. And it is based on all natural stuff, and the lady April that invented this and uses it swears by it. And you know what? I had some of the sprayy stuff. I think you and I got a test vial at one of the Nova Scotia Bushcraft gatherings when she was first releasing this product. And I tried it and had okay results with it. I found it did work okay for like mosquitoes and black flies. Not so good on like the deep wood stuff. I didn't find it worked really great on like deer flies, moose flies, sand gnats.
I have one for the dog, and I think I have a large bottle of the spray or the that you can soak these lava balls in it.
Mm-hmm.
And like when we go like next week, we may very well throw that on the dog and see how long it lasts before he chews it.
And that's the thing with a lot of these things is they say Atlantic is good for pets and stuff like that, or safe to use on pets, provided they don't ingest it. You name one animal doesn't lick something, you spray on it. You know what I mean? So be aware. Eric's saying, well, there used to be a lotion from Avon that my mom used to get when I was a kid, but I don't remember the name of it. And I remember something from Avon too. But Avon changed since we were kids.
There was a product that you could buy. It was cheaper, and I think Avon eventually bought it. It was called Skin So Soft.
Maybe that's what he's thinking of.
It came in a white bottle with letters, and I think Off now sells a version of it.
Yeah.
To buy. But Skin So Soft was one we used for years.
I think I have some out in my cupboard when it was from Avon. At least the bottle. I don't know what's in the bottle, but anyway, that's terrifying to think about.
And the other one that Missy mentioned a couple minutes ago is the Listerine, and I think it had to be a specific one. Like it had to be the blue one or the green one. It had to be Listerine. It couldn't be one of the other brands. And I don't think you had to mix it, shoot it straight, but they just put it in a spray bottle and spray it around your campsite, and it stays outside. It creates this invisible barrier that protects them. But I guess the scent in it is strong enough, and it's confusing enough that bugs just avoid it. So there's certain, and it makes sense. Certain plants want to avoid being attacked by insects and bugs, so they release things that push them away. And other ones are attracting them because they use them for pollinating, right?
Mm-hmm.
So not everything is pollinated by bees. Some plants and flowers are pollinated by other animals. So they try to use scents to encourage the animals to interact with them or avoid them depending on the situation. So
Another natural one that I use and have had good luck with, once again, jury's out, make your own decision. Bounce sheet. I sometimes will tuck a bounce sheet in the back of my bandana or hat or something like that and just leave it draped down the back of my neck. And I will have significantly less bugs around me than other folks. And that might just be odd man out syndrome, you know what I mean? But I had an old timer once tell me to do it when I was working in the woods cutting, and I kind of took it from there, and it's always worked. At that time, we used to shove them in the top of our hard hat. But keep in mind, there's also a lot of chemicals and stuff in these bounce sheets. Like, they tell you not to dry your kids' clothing with bounce sheets because any flame resistance in that material will basically be nullified by whatever happens with a bounce sheet. Same as kind of fabric softener and all that stuff. So once again, do your research. Maybe that's not your method, but it is something else to give a try if you don't want to be spraying heavy DEET on your body. I am still a fan of DEET. I am pretty sure that the amount of DEET I've had on my body is probably enough to kill a small elephant. So if anybody's going to get poisoned by DEET, I'm probably pretty high up on the list. I remember the stuff, and you would remember the stuff too, Ben, from the militia, the rag force. They used to give you the little bottles, and it was like 50% DEET or something like that. I actually seen that stuff eat plastic. I'm just guessing at what it was. A couple of my buddies in the reserves got me a couple bottles off it. Amazing stuff. Would keep everything away from you. But it could only be stored in glass because it would eat plastic. I had it. Remember those old pencil boxes as a kid? The little plastic boxes with the pop tops? I used to have one of those in the cubbyhole of my truck, and that's where I kept these two bottles, and one of them broke open, and it literally ate the plastic box. So I knew it was strong stuff. That's how you know something's good. If it can eat plastic, it's good stuff. Probably eat skin, too. And they told you literally do not place directly onto skin, but I'm pretty sure we all did, and we're all still around to talk about it, and we're all fine. Fine. But yeah.
Highest concentration of DEET commonly available for insect repellent is 100%.
Wow. Where can you get 100% DEET?
Ben's.
Really? That's going to be basically straight poison at that point. Like, that can't be safe for humans in that kind of concentration.
30% DEET is considered a good balance of protection and safety.
I was going to say, because even Deep Woods Off, which is one of the higher end, quote unquotes, is only around 30-35. I think musk oil, however you want to say it, some of their products get around 40, but that's about the highest I have seen that you can buy over the counter. I've never looked at Ben's, to be fair.
Watkins sells a pretty good one too. I can't remember what percentage is that at 30%. We had been years ago. We made mistakes in life, and I don't want anyone to judge me for it, but we've made mistakes. We got involved with a multi-level marketing group, and they sold a product in a green can that was unreal. I think it was one of the higher concentrations DEET you could buy, and it really did work. There was a few products these guys had that were worth it, and that was one of them. And I think we had a can of that up, like probably 10 years after we left them. We still had a can or two laying around. So they had a couple of good products. So if you ever, meet somebody who sells Quick Star or Amway or something like that, they do sell a really good fly repellent.
All right, dude, you want to talk about bad decisions? When I was driving the truck with Dad, we were down south. We were delivering something to Florida. We were going to St. Petersburg, and we got held over for a couple days because we missed our load or we were there early. I can't remember. Anyway, we were held over for a couple days, and we're hanging around the parking lots. And there's literally this guy going door to door, like, here, you want to buy this product? And it was just like a random spray bottle from the dollar store full of some sort of magic concoction. But man, would it keep bugs away.
It worked.
It worked, but to this day, I don't know what was in it. Like, I don't, and I don't want to know anymore.
Yeah, I think there was one. It was like 70 or 80% that used to get, and I know I've seen ones in glass, but there's also one that came with a small white bottle. But the bottle was so small. That was kind of your hint that it was super potent. You only needed a couple of drops. And like you said, if it touched plastic, if it touched anything that could be dissolved by anything, like I think I've heard water referred to as the universal solvent because you can dissolve so many things in water. But no, this would dissolve anything that was
Just talk one
dissolvable.
more time.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome to the show, Steve. So Steve's saying the last 3 times he's been out in the woods, he had no bugs thanks to permethrin, so it's looking pretty good there. I was out
Yeah.
last night for 4 hours. Where'd you get yours, Steve? Because it's actually a little hard for us Canadians to find. You can buy it in horse products, but
Yeah.
the civil side stuff like Ben has over there, generally not an easy product to pick up in Canada. You can find it here and there, but I mean, you're not going to walk to Walmart and pick it up, that's for sure.
Getting some strange looks here.
Well, you guys have a few more options available to you over there, too. Like, you can find it in big stores, but it's not common. I bought this horse stuff. Yeah, there, see? He bought the horse stuff. And that's exactly it. And we're not scientists and we're not doctors. We're not telling you to go do this. But the common way to get it is you buy the horse product and use it on your clothes.
So my understanding is that they spray the stalls and probably like the blanket they put over the top of the horse, and that keeps the flies and stuff off the horses. So it makes some sense. Just be really careful if you do happen to get your hands on anything like this. In the end, there's plenty of methods to deal with insects. It's a common problem in the world, but it is something to be very aware of. Again, try the least invasive products first before going to the most extreme. And myself, I try to keep the chemicals off my flesh. Like I'd rather do my tent than my clothes. But if it gets bad enough, I'll consider that too, right? Depending on the location. And I've been in places where the flies are deadly. Like I swear they're trying to carry me away. And by mass, they have the strength. You know what I mean?
When I was doing PGIs, I seen like, and we've talked about those are in the past. If you're interested, go find another episode. But I found when they were so thick, because we used to do them in May, just before green up, and you would stop to do your count, and literally the second you stopped, you could not breathe. You had to wear like a long hoodie, pull it over your head with a screen over it, put your head straight down, and just do your count and leave. Because if you stopped, you could not breathe. If you opened your mouth, they were in your mouth. They were in your eyes. They were in your ears. They're so thick. If people don't understand how thick black flies can get, I sincerely hope you never actually find out, because it is one of the most uncomfortable environments you can be in. It's not just the biting sucks too. It's the absolute suffocation that comes with it. If you are at all claustrophobic, like I have actually seen fire crew members have claustrophobic episodes over, because it's like a wall that just hits you. You feel closed in.
Oh man. When I was real young, my grandparents apparently wrapped me in a blanket and ran to the car one time. They were so bad at a cabin. We were backwoods fishing in Newfoundland one time, and we watched them come out of the woods. And when the van hit a cloud, you felt it, and it was like a heavy rain. Just pop, 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 pop. When we got out of the van later, and we were standing on the lake, I watched them come over, and they enveloped us, and people just became fuzzy.
Yeah, and you mentioned the whole rain thing, and I was just gonna say that, and you beat me to the punch. I'm sure you'd remember driving around at like twilight here in the spring, and it sounds like rain. It's not rain. It's bugs.
Yeah, your car's just covered in
oh,
bug.
it takes forever to get them off. If you're not too concerned about your car, hydrogen peroxide will break down most proteins. It'll also break down some paints, so be careful.
But no, it's rough. But yeah, and when you're in that, like I remember my knuckles swelling up. I couldn't close my fists or open them. They were stuck like this. Eyes were, they bit the eyelids, and the eyelids weren't working quite right. Like you'd be so itchy and scratchy, and oh, just horrible.
It can be miserable. And like I said, if you haven't experienced that, you don't quite understand how bad it can be. And then you have appreciation for what a lot of people would say, oh, the bugs are bad. And you're kind of like, they're not that bad.
I don't know if you know what bad bugs look like. Right? If you get bit 2 or 3 times, an hour, it's not bad. If you get bit 2 or 3 times a minute, it's getting there. But I've seen places where that's a second.
Oh, easy. Like you're just always getting bit somewhere. Anyway, story for another time. We're up to 40 minutes. Any final thoughts here, Ben?
No, just something to be aware of. Protect yourself. Take reasonable precautions, and do your own research. There's a ton of options out there. It is probably one of the largest moneymakers in the world. I don't know that statistically, but walk into any hardware store and check out the insect control area, and you will see that there's a ton of stuff there.
I was going to say, any big box mart, you're going to have it right by the aisles. Like, at least here in Canada, and that's where I'm taking my experience. Walmart, Canadian Tire, Home Hardware, Kent, in the aisles, bug repellent. Any time of the year, there's bug repellent.
And options, lots of options. It's not just like, you have a few companies making products, and they're quite proud to sell them to you. So
no, there's a lot of options. Steve, the deer flies will eat you alive. Yeah, I know it came in a little late there, Steve. We did talk about deer flies, horse flies, everything there at the start. Jump back and you'll see that. But yeah, we have a lot of interesting insects around here. But I think that wraps it up a little bit here for us tonight. So we are, like I said, over our 40 minutes, way over our 30 minutes. I guess for me, get out there, have fun, try to stay out of the bugs, try to stay out of the heat. Both Ben and I are going through kind of semi-heat waves on extreme sides Canada here. Hopefully everybody else is trying to be a little cooler. But have fun, get dirty, take chances, as Miss Frizzle used to say. Magic School Bus reference. Hopefully we don't get pulled for that.
Done. It's the end of the podcast. That's
Anyway,
what's over.
have a good evening, folks. We'll talk to you next week.
Night off.